I think that academic medicine can be more fulfilling than private practice, and that might be unpopular.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for doctors by doctors, brought to you by Panacea Financial. My name is Dr. Ned Palmer. I'm going to be solo hosting this today. I'm incredibly excited to be here today talking to Dr. Chineze Ebo. We're going to be talking about all things pediatric endocrinology, what it's like being an underrepresented minority physician in medicine, our shared training experiences in the great city of Cincinnati and at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and really why and how we can get the price of insulin cheaper for everybody. I think we're really onto something here. So I'm incredibly excited that we're going to be talking about all things through her path in medicine, what really drove her into pediatric endocrinology, something I think we're all familiar with, but maybe don't really know the ins and outs, the inner workings of, and then how we can continue to support future generations in medicine through her organization, NextGen Pediatricians. She's really working at supporting the next generation behind her. We always love talking to doctors. I always love talking to doctors that are always there for the future generations. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Chineze Ebo to the podcast for doctors by doctors. Good afternoon. I'm here with Dr. Chineze Chi Ebo as a pediatric endocrinology fellow currently at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. She's originally from the Philadelphia area and completed her undergraduate studies at Cornell before attending medical school at Chicago Medical School at Rosalind Franklin University. She then completed her pediatric residency at Cincinnati Children's Hospital in 2022. Shared alumni, I love it. Her interests include advancing health equity in pediatric endocrinology with a focus on reducing health disparities and expanding access to care for marginalized communities. She is also dedicated to enhancing medical education on health disparities and endocrine care for trainees, as well as advocating for physician wellness. Passionate about mentorship and diversity in medicine, she co-founded NextGen Pediatricians, a national mentorship organization supporting underrepresented minority pediatric residency applicants. In her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her loved ones, traveling, hosting game nights, and exploring new restaurants. Dr. Ebo, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited to be here too. I cannot wait to really dive in and nerd out on all things pediatric endocrinology, on health inequities and disparities, how we can find a way to make insulin free for everybody whenever they need it. I think we got a lot of ground in front of us, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'd love to hear your story and just leave a little open space about how did you become interested in medicine? How did you get from Philly to Chicago to Cincinnati now and that whole journey?
I've been all over the place. Like thinking back at it now as, rising faculty, it's like, oh my gosh, like I've been 10 years in the game. But really, I think my first interest in medicine started actually with my mom. She's a physician herself. She's an OB-GYN doctor. And she is in Philadelphia, but actually works in New York. And so growing up, I kind of was able to see medicine just through the actual lifestyle of having a parent in medicine, kind of the long hours, especially when she was on call and like how busy she was. But, I also had the opportunity to see things from the medical side. So going in and being able to volunteer, at hospitals, go in with her and shadow. It was just a really cool experience just to see how she would interact with her patients and all the cool like pathology that she was seeing. So for me, that was kind of my initial interest in exposure to medicine. And because of that, I really took some time to get involved with more volunteer work. I really enjoyed, working with children. I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and so I grew up taking care of my younger siblings. And so there was always kind of this like, a little bit of this nurture aspect where it's like just being around children and caring for them was something that I love to do. And so kind of took your traditional but not so traditional steps to get to medical school. So when I was in college, I was a psychology major, and I absolutely loved that. And I think it definitely contributes to how I function now as a physician. But I had not taken all of the prereqs that I needed, and the ones that I did take, I didn't do so hot. So I actually ended up doing a post-bac program in Chicago. And I did that for 2 years, really did well. And I think it really helped to not just enhance my academic record, but also just improve my confidence and, my comfort with starting medical school. And then started medical school shortly after at Chicago Med. It's interesting because I actually went into medical school thinking I was going to be OB-GYN, some of with my mom, and then just some of my interest in, deliveries and being part of that. And literally got to my OB-GYN rotation during 3rd year, and I was like, absolutely not. Like, how do I make this rotation shorter? How do I not go in? after 1 week, I was like, how do I get out of this? And I also think that I kind of had that very traditional, I don't know how traditional it is, but that experience that I hear some Peds people have where you're in the OR, there's like a C-section happening, and it's like, okay, where's your attention? Is your attention on mom and what's happening with the mom, or is your attention on what happens with the baby post-delivery? And every time I was in the OR, like, okay, but like, can I just go over to the baby? Like, what are they doing over there? And so for me, I think that was kind of an awakening, like, oh, perhaps OB-GYN is not for you. And then do my pediatrics rotation. I was like, this is it. This is where I feel comfortable. And so having that, and then, applying to residency, had a wonderful residency experience, and, opted to stay in Cincinnati for the rest of my training and now my faculty career. So it's been a long journey, been an exciting journey, has been a non-traditional journey, but it is mine, and I've enjoyed it.
We love talking to people who are non-traditional journey, who have taken non-traditional paths and journeys through. I myself was a Caribbean grad, just to give you a little background. And so similarly, coming out of undergrad was not as well prepared as I could have been. And I had the baccalaureate path in front of me. I think you're the first baccalaureate or post-bac program person that we've actually had on here. I'd love to hear just a little bit about your experiences with that. Obviously, we've heard mixed reviews. People feel, frankly, fairly spicy comments on both sides of whether it's necessary or unnecessary. And it sounded like a really positive experience for you, and something maybe not a lot of our listeners have heard of or heard directly from somebody who went through it.
Yes, absolutely. My post-bac program experience was just phenomenal. It was exactly what I needed at the time that I needed it. I think for me, I knew that I needed to take additional classes to be able to apply to medical school, and also retake classes, but also take some upper level science classes to kind of show that I had this upward trajectory, that my, from an academic standpoint, medical schools could have trust that I would be able to handle the medical school course load. And so for me, that was the intention of doing the post-bac program. I was very intentional about the post-bac program I chose, because the one that I did actually gave you a degree after it. So not a master's degree, it gave you a second bachelor's degree in medical science. But for me, I was like, if I want to do all this work and get all these credits and pay all this money, I'm leaving here with something. Like, I'm leaving here with something. And so for me, that was one of the biggest draws about this program. And then also that it was in Chicago, which at the time I'd never been to the Midwest. So it was kind of like breaking out of, being on the East Coast for so long. And I honestly, the experience was great. I think in post-bacs, and I don't know that obviously not every post-bac is the same. Some are more structured than others. Mine kind of was in that mid-range where there were some structured things, some structured classes you had to take, but a lot of it was kind of, you had to put the effort in and be a little bit more intentional about, like, this is what my goals are. These are the classes that I want to take. And we had mentors and all of that. But I just really loved it because not only did I get to take classes, I actually got involved in organizations. So it was my first time being part of a MAPS organization, which is Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. I was able to get involved with MedLife, which is like a, travel organization that goes to different countries and does, medical work. So I got to go to Lima, Peru. I actually got my first research publication, which is like crazy. I was like probably 15th author, but whatever. It's a publication. So
still counts.
It counts.
At that stage, it still counts. Yep.
Right. I was like, I'm a pre-med, but like I, got involved with my bio teacher also was a geneticist and was doing genetics research. So getting involved with that. So I think for me, not only did it provide me the ability to show, academic achievement, but also get involved in the very other things that you need to be, I think, a successful medical student and a physician.
That's incredible to hear. Like I said, I think there's a lot of feelings in both directions. What I like what you're describing about it is like, going from undergrad to med school is a level shift, right? We talk about this all the time. Like everybody kind of, it's drinking from the higher hose, it's this, that, or the other. You need to have systems and structures in place, and you need to know how to learn, which sounds silly, but you can get pretty far in life without knowing how to learn. And so I love that your program didn't just give you that, it also gave you a lot of like the professional experiences as well of the academic side and journal writing and participating in like academic research. That's fantastic to hear. You mentioned mentorship in there, but we're going to talk a little bit later about mentorship in more in totality. So I'm going to put that one to the side for now. Now I want to understand, so you're going through, we went through pediatrics residency, similar med peds, but, at least I'm like half of a pediatrician, in the same facility at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. What was it about being in those four walls in Cincinnati that really led you into pediatric endocrinology? I understand getting away from OB and that transition, but what is it about the glands and the hormones that does it for you?
No, that's so real, because I honestly, it wasn't on my radar when I started residency. I actually came into residency thinking I was going to do like NICU, heme-onc, or adolescent medicine, which are, again, so all different things. So it's kind of wild that my head was in that space. But I had done some away rotations prior to starting residency, and so had been kind of dipping my toe in different things. Endocrinology was exposed to me actually my intern year at Cincinnati Children's. We have a rotation where we did nephrology and endocrinology paired together, and so I intern year had a rotation on there. And I, on the inpatient side for endocrinology, it's a lot of, diabetes management. That's kind of, I would say, the crux of what we see from, just from our primary team standpoint. And so you're seeing a lot of diagnosis, like new diagnoses of who are coming through the ED. They're coming with your typical diabetes symptoms. They have this new diagnosis. They're trying to navigate what this chronic disease is going to look like for their children. And I honestly loved obviously not for the families, but I loved the conversations and kind of the approach to diabetes management, the longitudinal relationship that these patients were now going to have with us, and the ability to provide reassurance that, this is, yes, a chronic lifelong, disease, but we have ways to manage this. We are so advanced and you are going to be all right. You are going to be a kid who's able to do whatever you want to do. And so being able to see that in person during my rotation, I was like, oh, I love this. This is what I went into medicine for. I want to be that family's doctor. I want them to come to me. I want to form those relationships and provide that medical support. And then I, ended up doing some outpatient rotation in endocrinology just to get the outpatient feel, which in itself is amazing. There's just so many cool pathologies, and I really love the idea majority of endocrinopathies, there's a treatment for it. Oh, you don't have that hormone? Great. I can give it back to you. Oh, you're making too much of that? Nobody, hormone for you. It's great. And then for, if you're making too much hormone, we have, things for that too. So for me, it was nice because while you're dealing with a lot of patients who have a lot of chronic diseases, we have solutions for them most of the time, and patients do really well when they're treated, and you get to see them continuously throughout their lives. So I really enjoyed those aspects of it.
We're going to talk about, experiences in medicine and how impactful they are, right? Like when and where in your career you actually get access to these things. One of my favorite ways that I've heard endocrinology described is it's one of the few specialties where you do critical care at home. In that every single day, you could be sending kids home with home blood tests, home urine tests, totally normal, multiple daily injections, multiple daily test points. It's one of my favorite things. And when we start to talk about closed loop or the 3-phase pumps and stuff, you have literally just distilled the IV pump off your pole in the ICU and sent it home with them. So it's one of the coolest specialties, I think, for that. I don't think it's often seen that way because it's seen as a lot of, thyroid this and, pituitary that. And yeah. But I love that. So I do want to talk about the experiential side of things because it sounds like you had that nephro-endo rotation at a really meaningful point in your career, in your kind of career trajectory. The example I always use is I didn't know med peds existed until my 4th year of med school. And then I went through a rotation. I was like, oh, this is perfect. And then immediately switched, applied, completely changed. Yeah, completely changed because it just, again, you get that feeling of oh, this is where I should be. So how were you able to find pediatric endocrinology exposure subsequently? And how were you able to kind of nurture that through your training, which is very structured and you don't always get to choose what's important to you, right?
I think for me, there's things that I know now that I wish I had known at the time. For me, I think I was blessed to be at a hospital that had a very large pediatric endocrine division. And it wasn't hard to say, okay, I like what I saw inpatient. How do I get involved outpatient? One of my mentors was the attending who was on with me during my first rotation. And I actually reached out to her and I was like, hey, I actually love endocrine. I want to know more. I want to get involved with some research if that's an opportunity. And to this day, that is my my go-to mentor, helped me publish some papers, So I think for me, it was, showing interest early if that is something that you want to do so that you can get connected early. I think for people who might not have that luxury at whatever institution they're at, or if they just want to know more about endocrine, Pediatric Endocrine Society is a national organization that actually offers resources for students, medical students, residents, fellows, and there's obviously faculty on there. If you're interested in learning more about endocrine and even coming to our conferences, they actually will sponsor some students and residents to come to a pediatric endocrine conference just to learn about endocrinology, see people's presentations, hear some of the talks about the groundbreaking things that are happening in the pediatric endocrine world. So I think one of the ways that you can learn more about it is through just national organizations that will provide that exposure. And then if you are fortunate enough to have an endocrine division at your hospital, just reaching out. I have not met a mean endocrinologist. I might kick myself in the butt for saying that, because I don't know. Now I'm like, that's not true. But for the most part, we're nice people.
I have to agree with you for a couple of reasons. One is my division director and boss in Boston is an endocrinologist, so I have to tread, is pediatric endocrinologist. So I still have to tread pretty lightly, But I also globally agree, it is certainly not the specialty that attracts like the phenotype of, real bullheaded or, kind of jerk. So I think there's definitely a much more of an open door policy.
Absolutely. So if you're interested, look at your, local pediatric endocrinologist. I'm sure they can connect you.
Yeah, and I love that because you mentioned the importance of mentorship, and we've talked about it twice at different phases in your career. It's so important, I think, for all of us going through to have people that we look up to, people who can just, again, provide that kind of like coaching and professional development that we all need going through these experiences. So you reached out and asked, which sounded like a really easy way to do it. Like, what did you learn through that process, or what would you pass on to others looking for mentors, especially those who are, it's always harder asking up, so the further down you are as a med student or pre-med or even undergrad, like how or whom do you even know who to ask? And so like, what advice would you give for people out there trying to find mentors?
No, it's a great question, because I think people are oftentimes very nervous to reach out, especially if you're looking for a mentor and you don't actually have a specific ask per se. I think one of the things that can help it be a little bit more fruitful in the mentorship search is like kind of writing down what is it that you're actually looking for. Be intentional about the things that you're trying to gain from a mentorship relationship. So are you someone who, I'm interested, if you're interested in research and like, I would like a mentor for that, write down what your research goals are. Because I think one of the biggest things that a mentor does is just provide almost kind of like a sponsorship. They're there to enhance your goals. They want to help you get to where you want to go. And you can have different types of mentors. So you might have a mentor who's good for your research. You might have a mentor who's good for clinical. You might have your cheerleading mentor who's just there to help you, cry or laugh about all the good things that are happening. And so I think it's just being intentional about what your goals are and what you want from that mentor, because I think that is also what helps the mentors be more productive for you. So I would say, if you're looking for a mentor, kind of write down what exactly you're seeking from that mentor. And sometimes you might not know, right? Like sometimes you're like, okay, I just want someone to be in my corner if I have questions that come up. And I think that that's okay. There are people who are okay doing that. But I think once you've kind of established what exactly you're looking at for that mentor, I'm just a proponent of reaching out. The worst that can happen is they say no or they don't respond. And then you know that perhaps that's not the mentor for you and you move forward. And again, I'm a big proponent of having multiple mentors in different stages of your life. I think that it's hard to think that one mentor can do everything for you, especially when the expertise levels are different, or just you have different needs that maybe are better from a few different people. Like having a mentor network, I think has been what has been most successful for me and what I would advise.
I love that model of it takes some boldness though, right? And like some confidence to be like, yeah, I'm going to reach out to people. I'm going to be ignored is probably like the most likely, like shot down. Again, especially in pediatric endocrinology, probably nobody's going to be mean to you, but they might be so busy that they just don't or can't respond. So it's just about kind of stacking the deck in your favor. Try to talk to as many people whom will talk to you. And then, have you had mentors introduce you to other people that you consider mentors?
And that's what I was going to say too. That's a big one too. Like sometimes it's like I perhaps don't really feel comfortable reaching out to that person. So do I have someone else that I know in my network that can help me? My program director, hey, like you have to talk to me. I'm your program. So I have this interest. Do you have somebody who you could reach out on my behalf for whatever I'm looking for from a mentorship perspective? So again, I would take leverage of the current network that you have, the people that you know. Don't sleep on being a peer mentor either. Like your colleagues, people who are in the same, current stage of life as you are also people who can help you out or may be able to refer you to people who have helped them. So I definitely think utilizing your network is also helpful.
And I think your network grows as you go through, right? And it can either grow that organically just by asking people around you, it grows as you go through just professionally, as you just know more people. You get to meet more people, like you said, go to a conference or get sponsored to go to a conference. Seems like a ton of money when you're a med student. I remember a lot of conferences I didn't go to as a result of not having money for it. That's so real, but it's so great that there's sponsorship money behind it. Like I said, I love that we, and we're going to talk about you with NextGen Pediatrics and Pediatricians here, is like trying to lift up the next generation and make sure that they're like well supported for it. So I wanted to connect the conversation of mentorship to your experiences as an underrepresented minority physician, where I know, and we have spoken to so many people who describe how critical mentorship is. When I've heard our physician advisory board speak at the Panacea Financial Foundation, so many of them discuss either mentorship or its absence being so impactful to their careers, both positively and negatively. And so, as you were going through your own career, like how important was mentorship connecting you as an underrepresented minority physician?
It was so impactful, and I think that's why pediatricians is so important to me, and it's like something very deep in my heart, because I think it's wonderful to have mentors who are allies, but there's something about having a mentor who can relate to you on a level that is very deep. I think there's things that, as an underrepresented minority, as a female in medicine, that I experience that is hard to put into words that someone else who has been through it or is going through it can understand. There's the microaggressions, the inherent bias that you might feel. There's certain things that having people who can understand and relate to it is just really important. It feels like almost like a safe space. And so I think it's been so important for me to kind of surround myself with people who look like me, who are in these important roles, not only just for the ability to feel like I have people I can talk to and relate to, but also to be able to envision myself in the next stage of life, like being able to see someone else in a role that I aspire to be in who looks like me. It just makes it palpable. It makes it feel legit and genuine that I can pursue that as well. And I think it's just something that I've seen throughout my life, now being in the stage I'm in and having people, folks who are below me, for lack of a better term, who are like, oh, are pre-med, I want to be a pediatrician, and I want to be a pediatric endocrinologist, and I see that you can do it, so I can do it. This has even happened with my patients, honestly, who I'm the first Black doctor that they've had. And little Black girls will be like, oh, you're a doctor? I want to be a doctor too. So I feel like there is something about I know that there's something about representation that matters, that it sticks with you, being able to you see your first Black program director, your first Black doctor, your first, Black pharmacist, and recognizing that, there's inherent struggles to get to that stage, but also it makes it palpable that you can also achieve that. And just the support, being able to talk to people who just get it, who understand what that means.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the patient side of things and representation, which I think we all know is so critically important. There's a mountain of data about patient outcomes being better when their doctors look like them and they come from the same communities and the same culture from them. I have to imagine that that's true in pediatric endocrinology. I know that we have it in adult endocrinology, cardiology, the last 5 years of vaccine science and trying to get, vaccine adoption in communities. So yeah, so it's really that it's important. There's like a 360-degree importance there, right? Like it's so important to you, to the community you serve, to the patients that are in front of you. So I'd love to hear more about NextGen Pediatrician. I cheated and I was able to look into it beforehand. But I would also love for our listeners to hear about it from you, about what you've done to support underrepresented minority applicants in medicine and what NextGen Pediatricians is up to.
So NextGen Pediatricians was actually started in 2020, around the time that the pandemic started. And it was initially developed because we saw that there was a need. It's actually a funny start because we didn't intend for it to turn into a mentorship program per se. We actually just happened to be in a group me with a bunch of fourth-year medical students who identify as underrepresented, who are applying to residency programs, and things were shifting. We were going from the in-person interviews to the virtual interviews in the setting of the pandemic, and they were freaking out. And I was like, this residency application process is already daunting enough. There's so many different parts of it. And then we're adding this new component where now things are going to be virtual, things are new. How can we support you? And myself and then one of my colleagues, Rebecca Fenton, we were like, let's just make a Zoom and just invite all these, medical students and just talk to them about, answer the questions that they have about the residency application process, whether it's about personal statements, interviews, whatever questions they have, let's just help them out. Jumped on that Zoom. We had about 60 people on the call, which we were like shocked by because we were like, this is a lot of interest. And at the end of the call, people were like, okay, like we really appreciated that. Like, can we do this again? Maybe for some other topics. And from that, Rebecca and I were like, we could do this. Like, we have the knowledge and we know that this is a space that these applicants need. Not just from an application standpoint, but just a safe space to be able to talk about the very real things that can happen in residency, that might happen during the application cycle, and just to provide that. And so we grabbed a couple of more of our friends, and so 5 of us started this organization. The intention was to have sessions, and then as we kind of went down the year, we were like, let's not just have sessions, but let's actually pair our applicants, our mentees, with mentors from all across the country who might have some similar interest. And so we were able to also get a mentor pool of people that we knew from all across the country to serve as mentors, so that the mentees would have like a one-on-one experience as well, in addition to these sessions that we were hosting every 1 to 2 months. And so our sessions focused on personal statements, mock interviews, how to create a rank list, finances behind preparing for residency. We did like a little intern boot camp. In the first year, I think we had 99% of our applicants match into residency programs. So we have now been doing this for 5 years. Our board has grown. Our mentor pool has grown. We're like kind of like, well-oiled machine in terms of having the sessions and having mentors available and just ensuring that we're providing that guidance and support for these students. So it has been honestly one of the greatest joys to be part of the founding of that organization because it's so meaningful, and especially right now in the current setting that we're in, I think it's more important than ever to have an organization like this.
Completely. I mean, as we've seen, so many schools are letting their foot off the gas when it comes to equity and inclusion, when it comes to emphasizing diversity programming. Obviously, there's the whole bullying aspect of being told they can't anymore, having federal funds rescinded. But we all know what happens when these programs let their proverbial foot off the gas and stop emphasizing it, is it'll get de-emphasized. And unfortunately, over the last 20 years, we've seen underrepresented minority population decrease in medicine. So it's not like we were doing great in the first place, and we're even materially close to solving it. So,
right, exactly.
What I love is that now you've been in operation for 5 years. I imagine you look back, much like I do, and think 5 years was maybe 20 years ago or yesterday, and it's sometimes tough to tell because it can feel like both. But now with 5 years of graduates, like where have you seen some of like your NextGen Pediatricians alumni go? Like that's got to be such an exciting feeling to have nurtured them through, right?
It's lovely because we really see them just go off and they're just going all over the country. And like, I think one of the things that we've been able to do, because we also hold a session where we kind of have a panel with program leaders from all over the country. So we just actually have one, I think last week, but they're able to get exposure to programs that they might not necessarily have considered initially, which I think was something else that we really wanted to do. Because me personally, like I said, Cincinnati was not on my Ohio was not on my radar, let alone Cincinnati. And so for me, I think it was also important for them to just get exposure to other programs and what it could be, being that a large program versus a small program, and all of that. And one of the things that I love about it is that each year for the board, we actually bring on NGP alum. So the board right now is people who were our mentees, who had mentors, and now they are functioning as the mentors. They are running the curriculum. So I do love that, people really have been inspired by NGP so much that they want to actually be on the board and continue the mission.
And continue to give back, which is amazing. I mean, it's the most impactful thing that they could continue to do then, right? Is just continue to lift up generation, which brings me to a question that I think we're unlikely to solve for on this podcast, but I do want to try, which is how do we increase the representation of doctors that look like our patients? We mentioned it's getting worse in this country. Like what turns that around, especially given the current, political climate and frankly, lack of interest in solving it, frankly? or even acknowledging it's a problem.
I think people need to acknowledge that it's an issue. And I think we, at some point, we're better about it. But obviously, I think we're almost kind of going backwards. I think things do come down to funding as well. I think people want to have the exposure. And I think one of the best ways you do that is by giving them funding to do that, giving funding for programs to be able to bring, underrepresented minorities and starting early, like, high school, like, getting college, med school, like getting people involved early enough where it's like you are kind of helping them and creating almost like a pipeline effect. I think are the best ways to do it. If that means you're going into the schools and doing like a, science day for the students, so they're getting excited about medicine and what that could look like for them, I think are the best ways to do that. And so I think one of the struggles with implementing programs like that is, again, funding, but also giving people time to do it. Especially if you're in academics, everything comes down to being allotted time to do what you want to do.
Time and money. Time and money. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And it's unfortunate, but I think, if you really put, and we've seen it, right? So having, they used to have, these stipends that they were given for URMs for fourth year rotation. So if you wanted to go to a particular program, they might sponsor you to come there, and pay for your housing and your stay for that time. And I think that is a way to introduce people into your program, into the city, and get them used to it, and in a situation where they otherwise might not have been able to do that. So I think it really comes down to giving people time and funding support to really start early and get people interested that way.
Yeah. And I think what's important to call out is like, it's not a lot of time and it's not a ton of money, right? Like it is what, what you're asking for is not enough to fix the Wegovy shortage or, like some other like multi-billion or trillion-dollar issue in healthcare, of which it sometimes feel like they all are. This is a week of visiting in a hospital just to give somebody experience as an undergraduate. You're talking on the scale of hundreds of dollars to really like change somebody's life and their professional trajectory, and what an opportunity that is. So it's amazing that there's programs out there. I'm super excited to hear about NextGen Pediatricians, and their continued support. What I did want to talk about is so your own academic career. Now that you are a rising academic doctor, you have got your fellowship in the rear view. You've got boards coming up.
Yeah, November. Yeah.
No, okay. Boards coming up in November. Not to bring up a sour subject.
I was like, oh.
But your training's in the rear view now. As you've now negotiated your own academic career, what was that experience like in making sure that you continued to advocate for these things that are, outside of traditional pediatric endocrinology, like in making sure that those are still represented in your academic life?
It's a good question, because I think it's something that I'm still trying to work on. I feel like I was so junior that I was like, can I ask for that? Like, can I do that? Am I allowed? Like, is that too much? But I think one of the things that was really important to me is that I really am interested in medical education and trainee education, especially in health equity as it pertains to endocrinopathies. My focus right now is in puberty education, because if you're a general pediatrician or you're a trainee, you're seeing patients, and if you're seeing young patients, your puberty is a thing that needs to be discussed, because there's just downstream outcomes and effects with understanding pubertal, normal puberty versus puberty disorders. All that to say, I'm very interested in kind of promoting that education and just making it something that everyone feels comfortable doing and talking about. And so I think I really get a lot of that support in going when I go to conferences and learn from other people. And so even negotiating for more conference funding, I think was a thing that was important to me, to kind of make sure that I'm establishing and keeping myself established with these national organizations to continue the education and learn how I can promote and also share knowledge with others. So I think that was one of the things that I worked on trying to negotiate for myself. And then, obviously always trying to negotiate more protected time to do those things outside of clinic. I'm a clinician first, and I'm happy with that. That's what I wanted medicine to do. But wanting to also be able to do clinical research or education things, I am trying to ensure that I get some time for that as well. And I think it's really important if you're someone who's negotiating a contract. Again, I'm a big proponent of writing down, like, what are your goals? What are the things that you actually want to see yourself doing? What do you think the next 5 years will look like? And so when you're looking at your contract and having some support in doing that, it's important. Having your goals written down is important. And even when I was doing my contract, I had the help of people. Panacea actually helped me out. I did use the contract negotiation services, and it was great. And then, having mentors, obviously, who are already in the academic space and know how this goes, helped me navigate that as well.
Big shout out to Jillian Vestal at Panacea Legal. I wish I'd had her in my corner at multiple stages in in negotiations. I'll share a very quick funny story to you, but I was part of a pediatrics group that was negotiating, and we sat across from a trained negotiator who said, but what about the children? If we give you more salary, we'll obviously have to take services away from the children. And it was like, well, first of all, that's a BS zero-sum game.
Like, actually, no.
But across the table from like 8 pediatricians, they're like, oh no, not the children, right? Like, I mean, we're all like, it hurts us all. Even though like in that moment, you're feeling so emotional. And what I realized in that moment was like, we're easy to distract because we're constantly focused at the patient in front of us.
Absolutely.
And somebody trained purely in business and negotiation is going to use that against us. And they're going to just like, oh, squirrel. And you're going to go look over there.
That's so real.
Where? Oh, somewhere there's a screaming child. I should go fix this.
Yeah, literally.
Because it's what we spent a decade or more just at 80, 90, 100 hour a week. Like it's every fiber of our being is like it tied into that, and it'll be used against us. And so having that kind of third party support, like I call it out in jest. I'm obviously like I've got some conflict of interest here because I think the world of Jillian and Fantasy Legal what she does, but it's just like. It's crazy to me, my own experiences of how I've seen physicians be manipulated against their best interests. Because this is what trained negotiators do. And we're up against that all the time. So I'm glad that you had some support. What I really like to call out is adding CME money. Sometimes people get really stuck on the salary negotiations and you realize there's other things you can put in. Maybe it's a call schedule. Maybe it's frankly, could be thousands of dollars of CME money and extra conference attendance, especially if it's good for the academic institution. You just don't even know what else you can add to the pot to negotiate, and you kind of stayed stuck on one number. So I'm glad that you got that, and that gets you out then into the conferences. Yeah. I wanted to ask, how much, this is a funny question to ask as two pediatricians, but like, how much did the financial aspect impact your decision? I know academic pediatrics is about the least paid specialty. I think endocrinology doesn't help, and I'm sorry for that. So, but I gotta ask.
Like in terms of like the salary going into peds endo, or just like as faculty, or like
in your decision frankly, in your decision to stay academic instead of considering private practice, like finances can change really dynamically through healthcare. Even the decision to go into fellowship, right, is like you're delaying. So how much did finances play into your decisions as you were going through making these decisions as you became more professionally evolved?
I get this question a lot because people are like, peds endo, like, you sure, baby? Like, why did you do that? And I'm like, oh, that's awkward. I think for me though, it's really came down to like what would make me happy. And I feel like it's very cliche, but truly it was like, I'm at my job, 85% of the time, like if I am miserable at my job, then like, what does the money matter? And for me, pediatric endocrinology is something that I truly enjoy. Like I enjoyed going to work, not at 4:00 in the morning. Like I enjoy going to work. I enjoy my patients. I enjoy the relationships I build. I enjoy the ability in academic medicine to not just be a clinician, but to be an educator. So for me, I don't think seeing patients every day and that's all I'm doing would have been ideal. For me, I was like, I want to teach. I want to work with some residents. I want to have some research time. I want to be able to go to lectures and hear talks, at work and have didactics and all these things like that. The academic medicine, as unappealing as it can be for some, just given the financial aspect, for me, made the most sense for what my interests were, what my career looked like down the road. And it made me happy. So I feel like I looked at the finance and I was like, oh, but I also had to think about like what would make me happy, making, triple the amount and having odd hours and like not enjoying what I'm doing. And, work-life balance was a big thing too. Like, am I going to have the time? Am I going to have weekends off to just chill out and see friends, family? So I think weighing all those things together in the setting of my interest was a big proponent. And I'm trying to think of avenues to promote and go through to advocate for better better salary and payment for peds endo, because I think what we're seeing now is a pediatric endocrinologist shortage. Because I think it's there's multifaceted. I think it comes down to people are like, why would I do 3 more years of fellowship when I might end up making less than a general pediatrician? Why would I do 3 more years of fellowship to not make that much, to not make as much as like, some other specialties? So it's I think it's well, when I talk to people about it and I'm trying to talk, promote peds endo, I think these are very real things to talk about. And I think that it's something that, if anything, fuels me to like, we got to address this. We got to talk about this. Like, we are in a true shortage there. Our fellowship programs are not all filling. Like, it's rough out here in these peds endo streets.
It's the obvious endpoint of not prioritizing pediatric care, right? Like, I think we've been seeing this in pediatrics for a long time. Dr. Josh Daly is a pediatric cardiologist. He actually was at Cincinnati when we were all there. Before, he's a friend of ours. We've spoken to him before. He lives in Little. He talks about this all the time of like, basically pediatric cardiology is the only pediatric subspecialty where you're going to make more money. And it's like, well, then what is your incentivization base here? Like, you got to be in it for the love of the game, but at a certain point, clinical medicine will still only take you so far. You still got to feed your family. You got to figure out how to pay your loans back, everything else. So I want to get in I want to get into some of our spicier and more controversial topics here, okay? And get your opinion on some of these. So, what's the most unpopular opinion that you hold about your specialty?
Oh gosh,
It could be about medicine in general.
I'm trying to think of unpopular, because I feel like some of the ones I have are pretty popular.
School's too expensive, training's too long, and you need to pay us more. So
literally all those things. I think that academic medicine can be more fulfilling than private practice, and that might be unpopular.
I like that. That's a great take.
I feel like people are going to be like, absolutely not, turning the podcast off, never listening again. Why would she say that? What's wrong with her?
I'd like to think people will give us a little latitude here. Look, I think that experience is informed by your own experiences going through healthcare. It's obvious you're attracted to academic medicine and the variability that it allows you. Those private practice people are going to send you their referrals when they don't want to manage it and it gets too complicated. So
right, literally,
you need academic medicine when you leave the textbook. So
that's it. That's real.
Okay, another one. What's the biggest lie we tell ourselves in medicine?
I mean, honestly, I feel like, once you get to the top, once you get to the end of, everything, your training is done, you're attending, like, it all is better. Everything is all better. Everything's great. And granted, I haven't started the attending life just yet, but I just think that if you are not actively doing things to just make it good, like make your life good for yourself, whether that's, making sure there's more balance, staying involved with your communities that support you, like, you're going to be miserable at every step of the way. Even when you get to this quote unquote end of the line, the light at the end of the tunnel is not pretty if you are not doing stuff to actually support your wellness. So I think like just telling people, oh, just get through residency, you'll be fine. Oh, just get through fellowship and then you'll be fine. Oh, just get to attending and then you're good. You're not, no more struggles. Lie. Not true.
I think almost everybody that I worked with and trained with worked more as junior faculty than they did as a resident or as a fellow, because there were no work hour restrictions. So that like early initial, like first 1 to 3 years was like most people, worse call schedules, more, maybe the work was different, but you worked.
That's what I'm saying. It's rough. And depending on where you're at, like where like if you're at a small hospital, a large, like it can be just as rough as training. So I just think just be mindful.
Be mindful. I love that mantra though. Like it focuses on you. Like you have to find ways to be happy. You have to find ways that bring you joy into your life and bring you joy in your clinical practice. So it's, you can't let the field, you can't be waiting for the field to give it to you. It's not gonna.
That's exactly it.
It sounds like you've been attached to medicine from an early age with your mother as an OB. But if you were not a doctor, what other profession would you have pursued? And why?
I think I would be a teacher. So my dad's a professor, or he just retired this year. So go Pops.
Congratulations.
But he taught communication and journalism. And I think for me, I also probably would lean towards being some sort of teacher. I thought I would be maybe like kindergarten, first grade, but now I think about it, I maybe be more like adolescent. I don't know. I kind of like that age group. So maybe a teacher, or if I was good at it, a travel blogger. Like they get paid and they're just traveling. You're just on somebody's beach and you're getting paid. What?
That one sounds nice, but I don't know what would make you either good or bad at it. I think are you eating and are you taking pictures? I think is one of the.
I just look at the influencers and I wish I could be better. I just am not, the constant engagement and then public comments. I think people can be brutal and mean behind a screen. So I'm good.
We always like to wrap up with a quick true and false lightning round. Okay.
Okay.
So these are true false statements. We got a handful of them here. Now I want to get just your snap judgment on these. Okay.
Oh God. Okay.
AI will help my patients manage their chronic diseases better.
True.
Love it. 3 years of med school is enough.
True.
Pediatric endocrinology is fairly compensated as a specialty.
False. F, capital F.
I just had to check. I had to throw it in there to make sure they weren't all true. Residency was harder than fellowship.
True.
Cincinnati way.
Yeah.
Speaking of, TPIATs are technically impressive, but a nightmare to manage.
False. They're very impressive, but I guess from a diabetes standpoint, like an insulin management standpoint. No, you know what? True. I'm on a break right now. I graduated fellowship, and so I'm a couple months out. I'm like, oh, I haven't thought about that in a while. It's fine, but no, in the moment, it's tough.
It's tough. It's the first week.
Once they come out of the ICU and you're managing the blood sugars out all over the place, it can be very tedious.
And lastly, for everybody in healthcare and for all my other internists and pediatricians out there, counting carbs is unnecessary. Depending
on who you talk to, I would say I would say there's technology now out where if you struggle counting carbs, there's new pumps that can actually you don't have to count carbs for them and they will give you coverage. But I still think it's important.
Okay. We're almost in a post-carb counting world.
Yes, we are. We're getting close. I'm very impressed by much of the technology coming out now that is kind of for patients who aren't the best about counting carbs that can still get them some great glycemic control. So we're getting there.
That's very cool. Thank you. I thought you were going to laugh at me just for even asking that.
No.
And then our final question here, Dr. Ebo, is what is one thing that you have recently changed your mind about?
In just in life or medical or
in life or in healthcare? I gave a life example. Other people have given healthcare examples. Mark Cuban gave an example about pharmacy benefits managers. We get all kinds of different answers.
The level of flexibility and balance I can have as an attending. I think I had this mindset that, once you come attending, yes, you'll have time, but there's so much more you have to do. There's so much more responsibility you have that maybe the work-life balance isn't as great as they presume. But I think I've had a mind change just speaking to other people who are currently attending where it's no, you can make life what it is. You can have good work balance. You can spend time traveling during attending. I think I went to this mindset let me get all my travel done now because once I start faculty, I'm not gonna be able to do it. And talking to people, they're what are you talking about? I do most of my trips as an attending. And I'm okay, great, love that. So I think that is something that I've actively had to change and maybe more excited about being an attending. Because I think there's this fear of oh my gosh, it's me. The ball ends with me. I am the one making decisions. There's so much more responsibility. But I think at the same time, it's yeah, you've trained for this and you're good to go and you'll get to have fun at the same time.
I love it because then you're the architect of your own happiness. They're your trips to take, right? It's not, you're not sitting around waiting for somebody else. It gives you, you're in the driver's seat, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Amazing answer to that. Dr. Ebo, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This was an absolutely fantastic discussion, and we certainly look forward to coming to visit you in Cincinnati and for some Cincinnati chili together.
Oh, man. You're a Cincinnati chili liker?
No, I'm still an outsider. I never could. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
We'll keep driving past it and go somewhere more interesting.
Thank you.
Dr. Ebo, thank you again. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us this episode. You can catch the podcast For Doctors by Doctors on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all the major podcasting platforms. If you enjoyed this episode or learned anything here today, please take a moment to give us a rating and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode release. As always, thank you for listening. The next time you see a doctor, maybe you should prescribe this podcast. We'll see you next time.